Good afternoon and welcome to the Digital Childhood and Wellbeing webinar. My name is Danica Saunders and I will be your host this afternoon. The speakers of today's session is Dr. Leila Jibut Desai and Pranitha Jagdeo. Dr. Leila is an educational psychologist and the founder of Psychologists Beyond Borders. Pranitha Jagdeo is the head of campus for our SACAP Durban College, and she is a transformational leader who champions growth, well-being, and meaningful change. We'll start today's session with a digital recording that Dr. Leila prepared, as she unfortunately cannot attend the live session with us today. Thank you so much.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me today. I do apologize for not being live with you today and that this is a recording, but nonetheless, I am very excited to present my portion of this webinar regarding digital childhood and well-being. As you have heard from Danica, I am Dr. Leila, and it is my pleasure to retell an old tale of Red Riding Hood. Now, I have taken the tale of Red Riding Hood and added a little digital twist to it. And we're going to call this the Red Riding Hood, a digital age retelling. Now, this is unlike the Red Riding Hood that we are all familiar with in some way or the other, as I guess. And as you would remember, Red Riding Hood is this very smart little girl that goes into the woods on her way to visit her grandmother, to bring her food. And on the way, she encounters a very sinister wolf that actually tries to befriend her and find out where she's going to go, and eventually intersects and meets her grandmother, and in the more child-friendly version hides the grandmother into a cupboard and waits for Red Riding Hood disguised as Granny. And somehow Red Riding Hood uses her instinct and she tries to uncover who this person is because it doesn't look like grandmother. That grandmother's eyes are different, grandmother's nose is different, and their mouth is different, and the story goes on. But I have used this story because in some way or the other, the digital child is very similar to Red in most of the stories. The digital child will wander into a forest of unknown territory or known territory that is familiar with them in terms of apps, in terms of friends, in terms of social media. But on that way, they will encounter such devious forces, or should we say misleading people, that can actually bring quite a lot of harm and create risk to young people's lives. And just like Red Riding Hood and the woodcutter that eventually saves her, adults such as us who are in this webinar together can act as guides to help build resilience in our digitally native child so that they do not become at risk and they do understand what is needed and how they can be guided to ethically and safely use digital devices in this digital age. So without further ado, let's begin our little tale, the Red Riding Hood story, or should I say, the digital retelling of Red Riding Hood. And the version I'm going to use is the one I've adapted for this webinar. So please allow me to indulge you. Let's begin. Once upon a time, in a world not so far away, there was a girl named Red Riding Hood. And unlike the red we grew up with, that I just informed you about, this one never needed breadcrumbs to find her way. Why? Because she had GPS and her Find Me device and a smartphone with endless apps. She could message grandmother before she left home with the "on my way." But as Red journeyed through the digital forest, just like all children her age, she discovered that not everything was as safe and magical as it seemed. And that's where the story becomes a lot like the story of today's children growing up in the digital age. So let's follow Red's journey as we explore the digitally native child, the risks, the red flags that she faces, and how she learns digital resilience. Now, most children today are born into the digital age, are born into screens, and swiping becomes something that is so natural. Learning, creativity, and global connections all happen online. Now, this is not always such a negative thing if used ethically and used with boundaries and specific safety limitations. And when I say this is not such a bad thing, let's just take a moment and reflect in a little poll that I'm going to ask you to kindly indulge me in. And the question on the poll is, how old were you when you first got your first digital device? And please pop up a number if you can on the chat, so that we can just understand what age were you. Just engage with us. And perhaps if you'd like to tell us exactly what the device was. Was it a phone? Was it a camera? What was this device? And how old were you when you got your first digital device? And please just play along with us so that we understand that it is not always such a bad thing. And we want to know, is that age getting younger? We do want to understand that in order to actually prepare and inform children growing up on how to use these devices safely and ethically without getting into trouble in any way. So I'd love to see those numbers, and I obviously will definitely see a recording of this webinar, and just to see the ages reflected, was it 10, 13, 16, 17? Be really lovely to see your feedback. So let's continue. The digital forest has many wolves. They appear in DMs, in social media, and even pretending to be grandmother. So I'm going to explain this to you, in which you already have been aware of. And catfishing is a reality for our children today. Catfishing, for those who are unaware of what it is basically a person pretending to be someone that they are not. Very similar in the story of Red Riding Hood, where the wolf pretended to be grandmother in bed when Little Red Riding Hood came to visit. Many predators are out there pretending to be children of the same age or adolescents of the same age, and in that way they do catfish our children, pretending to be someone that they are not, luring them and engaging them into very unsafe territories, placing children at severe risk. This is an absolute reality, and it occurs on many, if not all, social platforms. YouTube, Snapchat, TikTok, and Facebook seem to be the most popular for these predators that engage in this kind of behavior. And children of all ages become victims of cyberbullying. The risk does increase as they get older, and cyberbullying is now known to be more prevalent than most people think that it is. Now, let's discuss that difference between the cyberbullying and the predatory effect of catfishing. Cyberbullying is what we recognize right now is actually increasing, and it's almost synonymous with the cancel culture. What is this cancel culture? Now, the cancel culture usually becomes this group or an activity that occurs amongst children or adolescents or even adults, that when someone says something or acts in a way that is not acceptable to a specific social group, a person is usually cancelled. In other words, social isolation is actually now administered and practiced amongst members of that group. What does this look like? For example, if a teenager somehow disagrees with something that is of such a hype today, like an outfit or a certain word, and if the rest of the social group believes that this child is uncool, they start canceling this child in various platforms, such as unfollowing the child or maybe uninviting a child to certain events. And this is known as social isolation, which is actually a form of bullying. This happens on digital devices and on the internet more frequently than possible. We notice that children lose friends, become unfollowed, and even sort of cancelled out on social media. Very cruel memes become made for them and then become passed around and becomes just a joke. And it's actually quite scary. It is scary because it provides and it also starts to illuminate very negative mental health symptoms such as depression, symptoms of depression, symptoms of anxiety, withdrawal behavior, withdrawing from social engagements as well. And this is quite disturbing for children today, that the digital platform becomes another arena that becomes quite risky. Now, social comparison and anxiety has quite an interesting link. And what does this look like? It looks like upward social comparison. And when we think of this, we'd like to think of the fact that a lot of social media platforms depict pictures that are idealistic and lives that are idealistic, and in no fault of the handler or the person who owns the account. These platforms become almost idealistic because it shows pictures that are perfect, shows pictures of a perfect life, a perfect, I would say, childhood, a perfect adolescence, a perfect social platform where people have the best of friends or the best of clothes or the best of bodies. And this is an upward social comparison resulting in quite negative perceptions, such as I am not good enough. Now, this is negative to children and to adolescents who already have negative or poor self-esteem or poor self-concepts. And often this also impacts on children with normal self-esteem as well, constantly comparing what the best or ideal life should be and constantly putting themselves at pressure in terms of adapting and keeping up with what is ideal, what should this ideally look like. This becomes quite negative, it becomes quite pressurized as these ideal standards become quite hard to live up to. And once again, this creates a negative psychological impact. And as we know, the famous saying, comparison is the thief of joy. We notice that positivity and enjoyment becomes decreased during this time as children and adolescents continuously compare themselves to other people's lives and believe that they do not live up to specific standards that they seem to create, that are created on social media, and that they often are, I would say, misinformed or misunderstood that this is not how the person's life is every day. Just because you see a specific celebrity having a wonderful life does not mean that that celebrity does not have a down day, or that something doesn't go wrong and that they have to pick themselves up. So it's very important for us to encourage children and to educate and guide children that these pictures, although are idealistic, often represent the best days in a person's life and not necessarily the person's life at every given moment. This is the kind of guidance we need to educate our children on. When we're looking at screen time overuse, this is actually quite a big social dilemma, in fact, not just amongst children, but also with adults and adolescents, in fact. And now this is quite interesting because one of the skills that you will see that we'll discuss later is modeling behavior. And this is when this modeling behavior comes at hand. Now, we're going to be discussing risks and red flags from here, just to understand how this is actually noticed and observed amongst children and adolescents. Now, screen time overuse, and that is the excessive use of being online, or being on your devices, whether it is your phone, your iPad, your laptops, whatever it is. Screen time overuse is a problem. It really does increase impaired cognitive function because you're not thinking for yourself. Assisted artificial intelligence as well, replacing cognitive growth and resilience often does cause this impaired cognitive functioning because you're not once again thinking for yourself, using your own resolution skills, using your own ability to resolve some kind of challenge or conflict. And this becomes also this also impacts on executive functioning skills, where it becomes decreased as well. We also notice that over time, screen use often results in delayed language development, and that is quite sad. There's not much there's not much engagement with each other, and excessive use of on their digital devices actually allows them to use less languages and impacts on empathy with other human beings, understanding also social cues, or we could say facial suggestions when someone is being hurt. This really does impact on social communication as well. Sleep disruption and melatonin suppression is huge, as we do know the blue light that radiates from devices often reduces melatonin and has an impact on sleep. Now, the less sleep you get or the disruption in sleep often brings upon behavioral challenges. And these behavioral challenges are often observed as the inability to self regulate. What do I mean by that? It means that when you are angry, it takes you a very long time, or you are unable to regulate yourself and often strew in that type of anger or emotion that you cannot let go of. Because of this, mental challenges will increase. And then over time, screen use can often also result in eye strain and, of course, obesity because there's lack of movement in social engagement, in activities such as sports as well. This is actually quite scary for us because we know that as adults, we are often very guilty of doing the same thing. And we need to be aware that all these kinds of symptoms that we can experience are experienced in younger minds, and that is quite dangerous. We do see this as a risk and a red flag because if it is happening at a very young age, brain development will not occur or will not unfold in a healthy fashion. We will delay that kind of development, and that can significantly impact the capabilities and cognitive functioning in children. Now, it's really important for us to recognize the green, the yellow, and the red digital flags. And what am I speaking about here? Not everything is negative in terms of the digital platform. And when we talk about green flags, we're going to talk about green flags in terms of noticing when is using my device a good thing. How do I use my device in a healthy manner? What is a healthy engagement of my device look like? You're practicing it right now. You're joining a webinar using your phones or devices or your laptops right now. And this is not a negative thing. This is using your devices or being on a digital platform in a healthy way. You're engaging in a healthy way. You are using it, and it's also timed at an hour so that after the hour, we are hoping that you do stretch and you do move around your space and that you're not staying on your screen for the rest of the day, but do allow yourself that healthy engagement with other people who are physically in your presence, or you are going outside, or you're engaging with your pets and your animals, and that you're not just staying on your screen. How do we recognize the yellow lights? How do we know our children are somehow warning bells? They are somehow at risk. And this is easily noticed and observed with mood swings or the overuse of their devices. Now, adolescence is obviously synonymous with changes in disruptive behavior because of all the hormones and dysregulation of the hormones. So please, we need to be aware of the mood challenges experienced in adolescence. And we need to be very, very aware of the difference in mood challenges that are expected or that are observed when there is overuse of a device. We can see this as a person's inability to put their device down, or an adolescent or a child's inability to put the device down before sleep, or not being able to engage in a dinner, speaking to each other face to face because they're on their device. This is when you can step in. And notice that this is a yellow flag because it's creating these mood changes and mood challenges. Now, red flags are quite important. Red flags are often noticed and observed by a child's ability to withdraw. There is significant distress and sleep loss. Now, when children are at risk in terms of being cyberbullied, for example, or being victims of catfishing, we notice these behaviors occur. These are massive red flags. The withdrawal are massive red flags. The withdrawal from family engagement or from their own friends, or if teachers are watching, the withdrawal in classroom. Noticing a child is no longer engaging that much anymore, but is becoming so withdrawn that you notice something is wrong. You notice this child is at risk. And that is why it's so important to develop these relationships and rapport with children so that they can trust us in order to ask for help and reach out when they know something does not seem right. Moving to my next slide, and this is quite important. Not everything seems dire or negative in terms of the digital space. And with that, we're going to notice that there are certain practical tools that we can adapt and that we can implement in order to help our children today, whether they are young children or whether they are adolescents, with very, very basic skills and techniques. And I want to just refer to Red Riding Hood, and Red noticed changes. Red noticed changes in terms of the world she engaged with. And our digital Red Riding Hood will notice changes. They will notice changes in mood swings, in agitation, and in sleepless nights. And they would be those red and yellow flags that we noticed, that we just discussed before. But in order to actually build resilience in our children, and as a mindfulness practitioner, I do believe mindfulness has a space in allowing children to understand what self-regulation is about, how to be aware of my body, and how to be aware of my changes in my body when I know that something doesn't feel right, how to trust myself and know when I am at risk, or most importantly, how to pause before I post something that could create harm or negative effects. So with that, it is so interesting to perhaps guide children on a basic mindfulness technique before posting. And that's simple as the instruction of close your eyes, take a deep breath, and notice your body. Check in. Am I a green, yellow, or red light? Do I feel uncomfortable with what I've just read, that I need to actually post something immediately? Do I need to just check in with myself? How does this feel? How does this land for me? That is practicing the pause before posting. Noticing your feelings as well while scrolling, and you are reading something that is disruptive or disturbing. Now, in this, we need to actually educate our children how to create healthy boundaries. That you do not always have to follow something that makes you feel uncomfortable, that makes you feel that something isn't right, and how to trust your instinct or reach out to a trusted adult to let them know what you've seen does not seem okay. Now, with that, another resilient tool could be mindfulness for self-regulation. And that's teaching a child that when I feel dysregulated, when I feel something that doesn't feel right, I need to check in with myself first, or reach out to a trusted adult to engage with them in terms of what should I do before engaging with whoever this person is that is causing that distress. It is so important to actually build our children's resilience by asking them or checking in on them on how they really are and educating them on the appropriate ethical use of digital devices and a digital platform. What is acceptable and what is actually unacceptable or hurtful. Once again, and I've reiterated, practicing the pause. It is so important for us to actually understand what exactly do we need to do before we actually respond to certain situations to be less reactive and more responsive. And imagine if we're looking at the story of Red Riding Hood when the wolf whispered lies. Red Riding actually took 3 deep breaths and asked, well, how do I feel about this? And here I would like to engage with you with your full permission, of course, and just a simple mindfulness activity of self-regulation. And what does that look like, and how we can educate children and young adolescents or young adults. How do we engage with practicing a pause, and what does it actually look like? It looks simply like this. With your permission, I would like to ask you to place both feet on the ground right now, to rest your back against a chair or a pillow or wherever you are sitting, to allow yourself to sit in a dignified posture, that you are breathing easily. And just take 3 deep breaths, inhaling for 1, 2, 3 seconds and pausing before you exhale slowly for 4, 3, 2, 1. Now, this practice can be practiced in a repetition of 3 reps, and after which we would ask our children or your clients or the children that you teach, what do you notice in your body right now? What does calm, alert, and aware feel like? And once you are aware what calm, alert, and aware feels like, you will be able to understand when you are not calm, when you are dysregulated, and when you become anxious about either a post or a message or something that just doesn't feel right in the digital space. It is as simple as allowing or guiding a child or young adolescent to actually ground themselves first, stretch or go for a walk before responding to something that doesn't feel right. Or most importantly, ground yourself first and then actually reach out to a trusted adult for that help that you may need. Speaking about adults, it's very important for us to actually remember those adults in the story of Red Riding Hood, that the woodcutter and grandmother played fundamental roles, that they did rescue Red Riding Hood. But in our digital space, using the same metaphor of the woodcutter and grandma and adults, Red or children in the digital age will thrive when they feel that they are not alone. Adults can act as guides and safety nets, and we actually need to. We need to create a space of human contact with our young minds so that they feel guided and supported in such a way that they do not feel that they are at risk, that they do understand when they are at risk, and that they are able to ask for help if necessary. What does this look like? What do responsible and helpful and guided adults look like? They are adults who guide and who model a healthy digital behavior. They are adults who provide that support and that open space for open conversations. They encourage these open conversations so that young minds do not feel judged, do not feel ridiculed when they do present specific challenges or specific dysregulated or specific areas of concern where they feel that something isn't right. And in becoming that adult who is a guide, who builds this rapport with these young minds, we are able to build trust with these young minds and therefore encourage resilience. Encourage them to step forward or to build themselves up from distressful situations that they may experience in their development. We cannot prevent these events from happening. We cannot prevent young minds from being possible victims of cyberbullying, of someone saying something negative to them. It may not be preventative, but we can definitely enforce and equip our children with significant skills that they do not become victims. They are much more skilled in their understanding of what they need to do, what they can do, and what is available for them, so that they not become victims and they know how to respond to protect themselves, to become resilient, and to know that from any situation that they might find themselves in, there is a healthy and safe way that they can ask for help and get themselves out of situations that may bring upon very negative impacts on their health and their mental health as well. And saying that, I have a little video for you that I'd love to play at the end in closing with this wonderful storytelling that I thoroughly enjoy telling you, and with this wonderful hopeful note that children are today's Reds, the digital Reds that we just told the story about. They do not need shielding. And like I said, we cannot completely prevent people from, or other children from, saying negative things to the children that we know or that we are caring for. But they do need guidance. They do need resilient skills, and they do need to be mindful to know what works for them, what is healthy, what is unhealthy, and how they can build themselves up. So I'm going to actually hand over to Danica to play this wonderful video for you on what a digital child in this era could look like, could be, if they are given the proper guidance, encouragement from trusted adults. And with that, and playing this video for you, I would like to thank you for your presence, for your patience, and for joining me in this digital space. I'm going to hand over to Danica, who would please and very graciously play this video for you. I am very open to questions as well that I will read throughout the day when I am able to read them, and I will respond accordingly in a time that I can. Thank you very much for your patience.
Grandma! What big teeth you have!
All the better to eat you with.
Ah, poor little child. Was there any way she could fight back? Introducing Grandma's Happy Fist Martial Arts School. We teach you Grandma's basket. And back massage.
What big teeth you have!
Don't make me bite you, little.
Hey, how you doing today?
Grandma's lullaby.
I said, what big teeth you have!
I was born with these teeth.
Wow, you have a nice voice.
You think so?
Join us. We teach you marvelous moves.
Digital Childhood and Wellbeing explores how technology is reshaping the childhood, bringing both opportunities as well as challenges. The discussion highlights the impact of digital life on childhood development, well-being, and mental health, while offering practical strategy for healthy engagement. It emphasizes the vital role of adults
in guiding and supporting children in today's digital age. Good afternoon, everyone. Let me start off with a very, very quick question. And going back and recapping on what Dr. Leila spoke about, taking us a little into our childhood, bringing up Red Riding Hood, and now we saw a video on kung fu fighting. My question to you is, how many of you have seen a child pick up a tablet or a smartphone before they could even start talking properly? So just with a raise of hands, using the emojis, or even the chat. And looking from the poll, it's up to 94%. I've got a whole lot of thumbs up, and the poll is going up to 94, and it's rising. Thank you for that. So these are activities that show us something important. Technology is no longer an add-on to childhood. It's built into the fabric of how children grow up today. From online classrooms and learning apps to gaming, social media, and YouTube. The digital world is shaping children's development into ways that no previous generation has experienced. And while this comes with incredible opportunities, it also raises different questions. How is technology impacting a child's well-being? What are the risks we should be aware of? And most importantly, how can we guide children towards a healthy digital engagement? And that's what we're going to be exploring today. The impact of digital technologies on childhood and well-being. So let's look at how digital technology is reshaping the childhood. There's 4 main dimensions. The first being cognitive, which is attention spanning, learning enhancement versus distraction. On a positive side, technology opens access to vast knowledge and learning resources. Interactive apps and e-learning can boost curiosity and skills. But on the downside, research shows that constant modifications and notifications and multitasking often shorten attention span, making it harder for children to concentrate for a longer period offline. The next being emotional dimension, which is self-esteem, anxiety, social comparison through social media. And what does this mean? Social media can give children a sense of belonging, but it also exposes them to comparison, likes and followers, which can fuel anxiety, create lower self-esteem, or even depression. The next dimension being social, which is online friendship versus isolation, or collaboration versus cyberbullying. Online gaming and communities allow children to connect globally, but it can also replace face-to-face interaction, sometimes leading to social isolation. Cyberbullying is also another growing concern. Another dimension is health, which is screen time, sleep disruption, and physical inactivity, which is excessive screen time can often affect sleep, physical activity, and posture. Children who spend too much of time offline often miss out on outdoor play, which is critical for healthy growth. Which now takes me to another practical example. During COVID, many children benefited from online learning. Some parents later reported that their students or their children struggled to concentrate in traditional classroom environment, having to become so used to digital stimulation. My question to you, again, using the chat box or using the emojis, what's the longest you have seen your child spend on a device without a break? And we can see the answers coming through. Half an hour to an hour, 2 hours or longer. We've got a comment that came up most of the day if I don't intervene. Okay, I'm going to close this poll. So what's the practical tools? And thank you for answering for that. The practical tools and intervention that we need for healthy engagement or a digital engagement. So we understand the impact, and let's talk about what we can do. The different strategy, one being screen time boundaries. The WHO suggests no more than 2 hours of recreational screen time per day for school-aged children, setting clear limits, which usually helps to create balance. The next being balanced activities is to encourage children to mix online activities with outdoor hobbies, outdoor play, or social interaction. Technology should not add to life, not to replace it, but should be a bit of an add-on. Mindful technology used is to teach children to take breaks, to avoid screens before bedtime, and to use technology with purpose, not just a habit. Digital literacy, equip children with skills to stop fake news, to understand how algorithms shape content, and how to handle cyberbullying. Next, parental control and monitoring tools. This should be used as a guide and not as a surveillance. This is to help children to feel supported than to be controlled. Another example, which a lot of families try to create, and it's something that agreements between parent and children. This covers things like free device dinners, no screens in the bedroom, and shared responsibility for respectful online behavior. I invite you to another reflection. What is the one rule or practice you already use in your home or in the classroom to manage digital time? Again, I'm going to open up this. You can either chat, use the poll, put up emojis. And you can continue putting in your answers. I'm just going to end this and I'm mindful of time. And when it comes to the role of adults guiding and supporting in children's digital life, this brings us to the most important point of the role of adults, where children just don't need rules. They need role models. Children copy our habits. If they use us as, or use, if they see us as glued to our phones at dinner, they will do the same. As adults, we need to set the tone and we also need to be accountable. What we tend to do, children tend to follow. So it's about setting example. Co-engagement. Instead of leaving your child alone with technology, try exploring it with them. Play a game together, watch a video, explore educational apps side by side. This turns technology into a shared experience rather than an isolation one. Open dialogue. Engage or encourage children to talk about what they do online. Ask questions with curiosity, not judgment, so they feel safe in sharing both the good and the bad. Supportive environment. Schools and families can create digital culture that value balance, well-being, and safety. This might include digital well-being, as well as lessons and free device zones. I'm going to take you into another practical question before I conclude. A teacher introduced digital storytelling, similar to what Dr. Layla did in terms of Red Riding Hood. But instead of banning technology, they turned it into a collaborative, creative exercise, making students feel empowered rather than restricted. My question is, how do you see your role as an adult in shaping a child's digital world? Are you a rule setter, a role model, or a guide? And that's something that we need to think about. What are we doing as parents? And how do we play a role in our child's life? But again, that is something for you to think about. Going into my conclusion, and as we wrap up, let's revisit the takeaways. Technology is here to stay. It's not about whether children use it, but how they use it. Digital tools can enhance learning, creativity, and connection. But without guidance, they can also lead to distraction, anxiety, and health issues. The solution lies in balance, boundaries, and adult guidance. Ultimately, it's our collective responsibility as parents, teachers, caregivers, and society to shape digital environment that support children's well-being. And as I conclude, I leave you with my final thoughts. Our goal is to raise a generation that uses technology wisely, not one that is used by technology. And I thank you. Going back to the poll, we've got majority, that's a guide, we've got a role model, and we've got a rule setter as well. Thank you to each one of you for your interaction. I'm now going to hand you back to Danica.
Thank you so much, Pran, for your lovely presentation. Please do follow us on SACAP on our various social media channels to stay up to date on program launches and webinar updates. And once again, I'd like to thank our lovely speakers for joining us this afternoon and to our attendees for making some time. We hope you have a lovely day further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.